before I'd had my NDE, I'd carried an awful lot of guilt and shame throughout my life because, you know, I'd messed up on a lot of things and I was drinking heavy, I was losing jobs and all sorts of stuff. And I just felt like a failure. I'd been seeing a friend off at the rail station and I was helping her onto the train with her bags. I gave her a kiss and a hug to say goodbye. We were chatting and then we just heard the emergency buzzers go for the doors closing. So I stepped back, but I just timed it wrong. And as I stepped back, my coat got trapped in the doors as they slammed to. I couldn't pull it free, and I looked around for a guard, but there was no one there. So I just yelled at the top of my voice for help, started banging on the windows, hoping that maybe somebody would run through who worked for the rail company and open the doors, but that didn't happen. The engine started to rev up, and I looked into the eyes of my friend Anna, and I just saw the look of sheer terror, and I just figured at that point, this is it, I'm going to die. The train started pulling out at tremendous speed. You know, I got dragged along the platform and then I got sucked under the wheels. It was like going into a darkened pit and thrown into a washing machine at full spin, and it was very horrific and very violent. The train eventually went on, and it seemed to take forever, but it did, and it carried on down the track. So I was just lay there in complete agony and complete shock as well. I just couldn't believe what had just happened. The emergency guys arrived really quick. They jumped down onto the track, cut through all my clothing, and somehow managed to get me on a stretcher and into an ambulance. The doctor turned around and said, "Look, there's a hospital just around the corner. That's why we got here so quick. But I think the one that's going to save you is a bit of a journey. Can you hang on?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's go." So we sped down the motorway at great speed, and I arrived in the hospital. I remember seeing in the emergency department, there was like a big sort of circle of guys all waiting for me, like, surgeons and consultants, nurses, doctors. And so there was a lot of frantic stuff going on when I arrived. I was just lying there, and I could see that they were pretty frightened about what was going on. So that was pretty scary for me. I didn't even know whether I was going to survive this, because my left arm had been said that I knew that much, and I was losing a lot of blood at this stage. But I seemed to be there for a while, and then my family arrived, and the doctor turned around to me and said, "Look, your family are here. Would you like to see them?" I said, "Yeah, just send them through." And of course, they were really distraught. My mother was in tears, and it was pretty much around that time while they were all stood around that I left my body. The trauma was just so much, and it just felt like that, and the pain was just so overwhelming that I didn't know how much more I could take. And then I suddenly went from this high tense atmosphere to a really beautiful, calm and relaxing space. Felt like a darkened room, but I wasn't laid on the hospital trolley anymore. I looked around me. I realized that I was laid on like a huge slate rock. It was almost like a huge medieval altar, if you like, but it felt comfortable to lie on, despite the fact that I was no longer clothed. You know, I felt comfortable laying on this thing. I looked around me, and there were these pulsating colors that were like orbs of light that were slowly flashing around me, and that kept me calm. You know, I figured at that point that, you know, that I hadn't survived and that I was dead. So I pretty much, that was what I knew in myself. But I didn't fight it. I didn't reject it and try and say, no, I'm not ready to go. I looked down to check my body because I'd seen how ripped up it had been from the accident, and everything was fixed. It was back in place. There wasn't even a single scratch or bruise, you know, and I was covered in this blue sheet. It was like a satin or silk sort of texture to it, and it felt really relaxing and calming to have this sheet over me, and the light that was coming off it was like there was a white bright light was reflecting onto this sheet, and this was coming from 3 grids of white light that were above me that had been closing in on me. Light that was coming from these grids was just so intense and beautiful to look at. It felt like it was healing me, like it was a healing light. And then I felt the presence of somebody near me, just at the head of my feet. There was this beautiful androgynous being, you know, neither male nor female in form, wearing just like a very contemporary black t-shirt, very similar to what you're wearing now. You know, there was nothing too ethereal about it or anything, you know, and that I found quite interesting, you know, because I already figured that I'd moved on. I thought this is obviously the place we all go to. Being had this expression on their face that was so, it's like I'd known this person all my life and beyond, and but I felt safe as well. I felt that I was being protected by this being, and there was a lot of love that was emanating from her or him, and felt like we'd known each other throughout the whole of my life and beyond, but I just couldn't figure it out. But I didn't really care, because I was in the moment, and I didn't really worry about anything anymore. And I remember closing my eyes for a while. Then I sensed again that there was more people, so I opened my eyes again, and there was 2 female forms that appeared either side of me. The girl to my right was kind of white Caucasian, sort of, I guess, quite European looking, and the girl to my left was more Asian Indian, American Indian, wearing like a more of a traditional dress, I guess. But they both had their hands like slowly sort of like hovering over my body, as if they were healing me, almost like I've never had Reiki healing, but I've seen what it looks like, and I thought that's quite similar to it. The energy that was coming from their hands was just really quite powerful. It felt like an energy of love. This love that was coming was just so powerful. It was just like all the feelings of love that I'd had throughout my life, whether it had been through my mother, my father, my brother, sister, pet cat, or lover, or all those different feelings of love, all kind of condensed into their hands, and it was just great. I didn't actually feel like they were healing my body. I felt like they were healing my soul, and I felt like they were healing all the hurt and the shame and guilt that I've been carrying. It's like all the layers have been literally peeled off me. I figured that I was being prepared for something. I figured that, this is like I'm going on somewhere, and I don't know where, and they're preparing me for this. I did start to think about my family at one point. I mean, I knew how cut up they were about seeing me lay there, that I'd been under a train. They were in complete shock. My mother was in tears, and so I thought they're going to be really upset now, because clearly I'm dead, is what I figured. So I lifted my head and tried to look over the side of this huge rock that I was laying on, and because I figured I was up somewhere, so I figured I'd probably see them. So I looked over the side of this huge rock, and I couldn't actually see them at all. But what I did see was this beautiful sight. It was like an amazing waterfall of stars. It was like looking at something. I've never been to Niagara, but I guess it was that vast. It was like millions of stars just slowly cascading over the edge instead of water. And these stars were just sparkling beautifully, and it was a very awe-inspiring sight. And I thought, wow, look at this. And I looked, there were shooting stars that seemed to be falling through the middle. As I looked down, I could see into one galaxy and then into another, and it just kept continuing into the abyss, basically. And I knew at this point that I wasn't in a darkened small room at all, that I first figured that I was actually in the universe itself, and I felt the presence of the universe and the power of it and the energy. So as I turned back over, I remember laying there. I felt another presence, but this wasn't really like the presence of people. This was something else. I felt all the energy that I was talking about, the healing energy of love, was now turned up. It was like somebody had turned the dial up hugely, and just ahead of me was this tunnel of white light. It was amazing. It was coming towards me, and there was this powerful energy coming from the middle. Again, it was the same white light that I'd seen above me, but it was huge. The tunnel was surrounded by these flames that were slowly like circulating around the edge of the actual light itself, which normally would be quite sort of terrifying to look at because it was pretty huge. But for me, it was just again, I got no sense of worry. I just knew straight away that this was the source of all creation that I was looking at. This was God, this is where it all comes from. It's not a guy with the beard on top of the Vatican ceiling in Rome. It's this huge tunnel of white light. The energy coming from that felt like every part of my body was just vibrating throughout from this energy of love that was coming from it. I remember I had this huge grin on my face because I was just loving the whole experience and the whole journey, that I suddenly got thrust straight back into my body, and I was back crashing down into earth, and I was back in the hospital. Straight away, I thought to myself, what is my quest? Why have they sent me back? What is my mission? Because I really wanted to honor it and follow it through, because, you know, it was just a beautiful thing that had happened. And I realized, obviously, that my quest was to sort of try and convey what had happened to me, and that there is an afterlife, and that the soul lives on through creativity, through my art and my music, and the book. Initially, I was going for spiritual healing. I'd found the Spiritualist Church because I wanted to talk about it once I'd had the near-death experience. I knew nothing about it. I thought, not arrogantly, but I thought I was the only person it had happened to, you know. And so I thought, how am I going to explain this to the world, you know? So I found a Spiritualist Church, and of course, when I went in there, they told me, they said, yeah, you've had a near-death experience, you know. I was pretty banged up at the time from the accident, and they said, look, we do spiritual healing if you'd like to come along. I said, yes, I did. And throughout those healing sessions, some of the healers that were working on me would give me clairvoyant messages, just very simple ones at the end, you know. And they started saying that I was going to be writing a piece of music about what had happened. And I figured it was going to be like a 3-minute song, like a pop song or whatever, because that's all I ever knew. But interestingly enough, the piece of music that they were talking about that I was going to write wasn't in that form. It was actually in the form of a classical piece of music, which I got no training in whatsoever. I mean, I'd never painted before either, but I was doing these really huge canvases because when I first came through from the anesthetic, part of me was obviously in shock from the actual accident, but another big part of me was just thinking, wow, I just had this amazing experience, and I was scared I was going to forget it, and I thought, I'm going to do a painting, and that's it. I'm going to do like a big Michelangelo style Renaissance painting, like the big classic ones, you know, to get the story across. When I started painting, you know, I felt that I was being helped to be able to put these textures onto the canvas, and then the colors and light, you know, lots of happy accidents would happen. So the two came together, you know, with an awful lot of help, and still do. I mean, I still write music now and get commissioned for both that and my art, and I still get lots of tuition.
How real was it? Like, could it have been a dream?
No, it certainly wasn't a dream or hallucination. It was because it wasn't like, it felt as real as I'm sat here now talking to you, but it was a different sort of real. It's like, I would call it ultra real, you know. It was just like this incredible place. Things were really sharp and bright. It was a different dimension altogether. You know, dreams are basically sort of, you know, they're more bizarre and chaotic, and they change with time as well. Whereas with a near-death experience, you know, it doesn't change. What you went through was so profound that you stop and you're able to take it all in. It doesn't change with time. So it's certainly not like a dream.
I think in your book you describe the beings as light beings at one point, but then I guess in your paintings they're dressed in black and it's just they look like normal humans.
I call them light beings because they literally were glowing from within. They're on a higher dimension of the universe, if you like, you know, whereas we are kind of like, I'd say we're more in the physical sort of lower energies of the universe. So that's how I defined it. So I call them beings of light because they just, you know, they really were, they were on a different level altogether. People who've read the book have found it a really easy read. You know, they're saying it's a page turner, which is brilliant because that means that they're going to get absorbed into the story. Because, you know, I hope you found it yourself that it's not just about the actual, you know, spiritual aspects of the near-death experience. It's about my journey. You know, coming from where I was before, you know, where my life was pretty messed up and struggling, to, you know, turning things around and creating.
It was a really good book and really easy to read. What I liked about it, unlike most other NDE books I've read, is that it read kind of like a novel. It was just a story. It's like some people just have their NDE at the beginning and then it's just like all this random stuff that happened later. But yours is like, this is my life before, this is what happened, and it's just like just this progression. And it's just, yeah, it's really easy read. And I've related a lot to it because, you know, I've had problems with drinking in the past, or like my life was going down the wrong path and I kind of, you know, spirit turned me. So it was really interesting how, you know, I don't want to give too much away, but like drinking problem and like manual labor to, you know, artist and writing orchestras or writing symphonies. So it's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great that it resonated with you as well. A lot of people have said to me, "Oh, thanks for being so candid about your life and stuff." And I just didn't really think that I was. I just, I'd never written a book before, but I just thought, well, that's a story and that's how it is.
So, what do you think is the purpose of life? Why is there so much suffering?
Just part of the texture, basically. Otherwise life would be completely linear. And also, I know from my own experience, that adversity make you stop and go within and really try and touch base with your soul and be authentic to yourself. And I mean, now is a classic example of that. When the COVID-19 first happened, everybody went into a state of panic. People were like stripping the supermarket shelves of toilet rolls worldwide, which is pretty bizarre, but that's what happened. And but interestingly enough, once all that settled down, it was great that I actually thought people were doing what I'm talking about. People actually stopped. They realized that they didn't have to race to work every day anymore. They all stayed at home, and people were starting to create and baking their own bread and teaching their kids and stuff. And it was just wonderful to see. And I thought, there you go. That adversity at that point caused everybody to literally stop and go within. And, so to me, that's what it's all about. Whenever things do go wrong, I just try and urge people to stop and just don't fear the future, because you don't know what the future holds. Yeah, okay, so things can happen like this now. We think, well, my goodness, where's it all going to go? But we don't know. We just don't know. And it's so just look around, and think, actually, where you are in the moment is not that bad. And most people will say, yeah, absolutely, you're right. So,
Well, I guess what would you say is the most important thing that you learned from your NDE?
self-love, basically. That's what I learned from it, because I got numb before. As I say, I was just suffering from guilt, and so a lot of self-dislike and self-disappointment, whereas all that love, that unconditional love as well that I was receiving, that love helped me to stop and give myself an incredible amount of confidence for the first time in my life to say, okay, I'm going to do a painting. Okay, I'm going to write a symphony. Why not? And it was lovely what you said right at the beginning, that I came back with these amazing powers, but that I don't think that they are. I think it's within us all, basically. That what I had was the gifts of this self-love and self-worth, and it gave me self-confidence to be able to do all these things.
Is there anything that you, I guess, wish that someone would ask you that they haven't asked you, or anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, quite a few people say to me, do I fear death? The answer to that is no, I don't fear it at all, because I firmly know and believe that there is an afterlife, and that death should not be feared.